everyone, it's Nina. Thanks for joining me today for a new Studio Monday video. Today I'm going to be featuring the Bazzill Embossing Plastic Paper. Now this paper is, as the name suggests, a plastic paper. It's a thin piece of paper and it has a plastic texture to it. It doesn't feel like plastic when you hold it, but when you kind of warp it around and feel it in your hand, you can feel that there is a more different texture to this paper and it doesn't rip as easily. It's a very sturdy paper. Now I want to use this paper with a piece of white cardstock. So I'm going to adhere these two pieces together. The reason I'm doing this is because even though this paper is meant to be embossed, I wasn't a big fan of how it kind of warped a little bit when you ran it through your embossing folders. So I want to make this more sturdy, and I found the best way to do this after playing around a little bit was to attach a piece of white cardstock behind that plastic paper. So you're seeing me take a sheet of adhesive and I'm going to adhere this down onto a piece of white cardstock that I've cut to be exactly the same size as the embossing plastic paper. After I've trimmed off the excess of the adhesive sheets, I'm going to attach the white cardstock, which has the adhesive already on it, to the embossing plastic paper. This is creating a much sturdier paper, and as I run this through my embossing folder, it's not going to warp as easily. I found that the embossing paper warped a little bit when I would run it through with an embossing folder, and I wanted it to be more sturdy. So I'm going to take also a stitched oval die and cut that out into the center of my two pieces of paper that are now adhered together. And now I'm going to take this Couture Creations embossing folder. This embossing folder has an open area in the center of these beautiful foliage images that are going to go around my panel. And because it has that open area, it's perfect for going ahead and lining up this oval in that area so that all of the images are framing the oval. You could also do this on a full sheet of paper that does not have an oval or any other shape cut into it. I'm going to run this through my Bake Shop machine with a rubber mat and also a textures plate. These are perfect for doing embossing techniques. And then you can see the really great detailed impressions you get on this paper. Because it has that plasticness to the paper, the plastic holds up to the embossing really nicely. It does not have any cracking, and it really creates a nice crisp impression. I'm going to back the window of my panel with a piece of vellum. I don't want this to be completely see-through to the pattern paper that I'm going to be adding behind that because I want this to be very subtle behind my frame. Now meanwhile, I did run through my embossing folder a piece of red cardstock, which I'm going to also cut a rectangle out of. Now you'll see the reason why I'm going to be doing this. The reason I'm choosing to cut the rectangle out is because I want the area behind that oval frame to not have any red showing. I'm going to have pattern paper back there. But I also want the red matting the white panel, and I want the red panel to have that embossed detail. Now that's a really extra bit of detail to put into this card, but I think it makes a big difference. It kind of pulls the matte and the white piece together, and that creates a really nice detail on this card. If you didn't want to have the embossing on the red panel, you could just skip that and just have the red matte. Here's where I'm bringing in that pattern paper, which I will cut from that same rectangle that I used to create the center in my red panel. In that negative area, I'm putting a little bit of foam tape. This is some Simon Says Stamp foam tape. It's a little bit thinner than the 3M foam tape, which is what I wanted. I didn't want it to be completely dimensional, but I also didn't want it to be completely flat. I wanted there to be a little bit of relief as I attach that pattern paper behind the oval window. So for my sentiments, I'm bringing in the new stained glass greeting stamp set from Simon Says Stamp, and I'm going to be using some of the smaller images and stamping those onto a piece of navy cardstock. These are going to be little sentiment strips that'll help form the entire sentiment on my card. So I stamped those smaller sentiments down onto the navy cardstock using some embossing ink after prepping the surface of the paper with an embossing powder tool. Then I'll take some white embossing powder and add that on top of my stamped sentiments, and I can heat set that to have a really nice crisp greeting. Once my sentiments have been heat embossed, I will bring that entire strip of sentiments into my Fiskars reinforced trimmer and trim these down into 1/4 inch sentiment strips. So my sentiment strips are about 1/4 inch tall and they fit perfectly those small thin line sentiments. I trim those down, and then on a white piece of cardstock, I'm going to heat emboss the words joy, love, and also the little ampersand sign. And I'm going to stamp those down with that same clear ink and then gold heat emboss these. These are antique gold embossing powder that I'm adding over top of my stamped sentiments. I'll heat set those also and then run those through with the coordinating dies. I really like the coordinating dies that are included with this stained glass greetings stamp set. It works perfectly for being able to pop these up off of your card. I want to give a little bit of dimension to these sentiments and also a bit of sturdiness. So I'm going to also cut 2 more of each of the sentiments with the coordinating dies and layer those behind the ones that are heat embossed. So I'll have 3 layers behind each of my sentiments, and then I'll be able to pop that entire sentiment up off of my card using foam tape. This helps keep the sentiment really nice and sturdy and also gives some nice dimension. I also popped up the smaller sentiment strips onto the card as well using some foam tape. My card is almost done. I wanted to add a couple more finishing details to the embossed design on my panels. So I'm going to bring in some Nuvo drops, and I'm going to add gold, green, and red Nuvo drops over top of each of the berries in the background. I'm alternating which berries are colored with each color. I wanted them to kind of be balanced. You can see they almost form a visual triangle here with where I've placed each of the berry clusters and what colors I'm using. And so that really ties in the colors of the card and also the pattern paper that's showing through behind my window. So I hope that this video has inspired you to try out the Bazzill Embossing Plastic Paper. It's really great for getting some really nice embossed details on your cards. So I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you want some more embossing ideas, be sure to check out the 2 videos I'm including here at the end for you to check out. Thanks so much for stopping by and spending some time with me. I will be back later this week with another video tutorial and then again next week for another Studio Monday.